Yeah, well, money is a very potent form of control. So he who controls the money controls the people. You can incentivize people to do things like build roads. Like if you can print money, you can make them build roads or go fight in wars or do a number of things. And it's also a way to control other countries too. So if they're dependent on your money, not just in Latin America, but in Africa with the CFA franc, you can extract resources. You can extract human resources or physical resources or whatever you want, as long as you control the money. So this is why Bitcoin is so disruptive and so powerful, because it breaks that ability for people to control others. Well, so long as you're holding Bitcoin in your own self-custody and you have your own keys. But you get the idea. It really transforms the entire landscape of the world. And the best part is that it is inevitable. It's important to first distinguish that there is Bitcoin and then there's everything else. Bitcoin is a unique asset class, and it cannot be compared to crypto projects. Like I've seen some altcoin, I forgot which one, but the founder is this guy that said, all governments are going to be using my project in 10, 20 years. But, these are centralized blockchains or distributed ledger technologies, and they can be easily replicated. But Bitcoin is digital scarcity, and that cannot be reproduced. And with digital scarcity comes value, because it cannot be modified or influenced or changed. So it's sort of like digital gold, and it's the same reason why countries hold gold. They should also want Bitcoin. They want something that's valuable, either as a reserve asset or a part of their treasury, or just something that they want to augment their currency with. But this is an opportunity, I think, where we can take this and run with it and get more countries on board. And it's better this way too, that there are more countries holding Bitcoin than just, a handful of countries, and predominantly Western countries like the US and the UK and big countries like China. You want more countries holding Bitcoin like Argentina, Ecuador, Peru, and, distribution of wealth around the world. Bitcoin makes it so that you don't need that anymore. You can actually take a slow, steady, sustainable path to growth by embracing hard money and utilizing energy to mine Bitcoin. So the whole formula for money has changed. Money is now energy and information, because Bitcoin is energy information. So you can mine Bitcoin using geothermal or hydro or whatever you have that previously you could not utilize, right? With oil, it's easy. You put it into a bucket or a barrel and you ship it. But with geothermal, what's the incentive? Unless you want to create some energy intensive industry that uses it on site, there's not much you can do. But Bitcoin changes that. And I think it is going to have a massive effect as countries discover this, that, hey, we're actually a rich country, right? And a lot of the countries that have massive geothermal energy reserves are quite poor relatively. So this whole equation is changing the world, and we'll see that playing out to further make these organizations like the IMF and the World Bank redundant.
Why haven't we seen other nation states really replicate what El Salvador has done as of yet? I mean, I think there's a number of factors. Maybe like you have a very sort of...
We just need more time. But Central African Republic was more trying to use it as a marketing stunt. I don't think they really understood Bitcoin, or they were just kind of trying to ride the coattails of El Salvador. But, you could say Argentina has opened up to Bitcoin, right? They still have dealings with the IMF, so they can't arbitrarily do something as bold as El Salvador, but Milei has deregulated money, and he's said kind of between the lines, you can use Bitcoin, or, his government has said you can use Bitcoin to settle trade. So there's kind of an implicit understanding that, you can use Bitcoin in Argentina, because he wants competition between currencies. So it's another path to Bitcoin adoption. But I think the important thing to understand is, like, if you've read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, you know that there are forces out there that don't want Bitcoin to be adopted. And these probably are running interference with people that do want Bitcoin to be adopted. But ultimately, Bitcoin is on the verge of failure. So it's just a matter of time, really. And hopefully we at Jan 3 can help, is inevitable. Everyone will need Bitcoin because all of the fiat currencies are on the push this process along and make it a bit faster. Yeah, well, money is a very potent form of control. So he who controls the money controls the people. You can incentivize people to do things like build roads. Like if you can print money, you can make them build roads or go fight in wars or do a number of things. And it's also a way to control other countries too. So if they're dependent on your money, not just in Latin America, but in Africa with the CFA franc, you can extract resources. You can extract human resources or physical resources or whatever you want, as long as you control the money. So this is why Bitcoin is so disruptive and so powerful, because it breaks that ability for people to control others. Well, so long as you're holding Bitcoin in your own self-custody and you have your own keys. But you get the idea. It really transforms the entire landscape of the world. And the best part is that it is inevitable. So even if we didn't do anything, this will come to pass. A Bitcoin standard will come to pass because there is no alternative. There's no way a government can save the fiat currency. It means that you'd have to have massive amounts of restraint and discipline to not print. And we know that's not possible.
More of an organic thing, I guess. So just love your kind of thoughts on you're saying it's inevitable. Like how does it actually get to the point where it's inevitable like this?
Well, it has to do with Bitcoin increasing in value, right? So as Bitcoin number goes up, then it gets harder and harder to have people accept the fiat because it's more apparent that when Bitcoin is at 1 million or $5 million a coin, do people still want to get paid in pesos or Canadian dollars or yen? I don't think so, right? Like it's difficult to see it now, although as Bitcoiners we see it, going from 0 to 66K or 67, whatever right now, it kind of shows you like this thing is rapidly increasing and there's no stopping it. And for other people, I think you have to see it. They'll probably need to see it at 250,000 and higher before that realization dawns on them, because you cannot look at this asset class that has gone from 0 to 250,000 in 20 years and still say, well, it's just a fad, and the fiat currency that's dropped another 100% in value and purchasing power is going to somehow come back, right? There's a point of no coming back. And I think this is a problem that most of the models for Bitcoin price appreciation miss out on, which is they're projecting for decades. I think it's more like 5 to 10 years, if that. And at some point you just stop accepting fiat, because why would you? Like, when do you stop accepting the German Papier mark, right? You stop at some point. Either you have to reset or use something else, but there is a termination point for fiat currencies. So that is where that goes. But your other question is, why should we, educate governments and politicians on Bitcoin? I think it has to do that we can have better policy come out here to enshrine the rights of Bitcoiners and private property, ownership of property, as we move through this Bitcoin adoption cycle. Because one thing we've learned in past years is that the laws and your rights don't really matter anymore, right? If you take Canada as an example, just a protest induced the government to implement emergency measures, the Emergency Act, which is martial law, right? And well, what rights do you have under martial law? Not many. So anything can be used to attack the population, and the property rights seem to be just an afterthought at that point. But maybe as we work with countries to implement these Bitcoin strategies, we can augment the laws that protect people and protect your Bitcoin. Because there's one thing that's interesting right now, which is, a government can say you have Bitcoin. Maybe they think you did. Maybe you lost it, right? There's the boating accident joke, but what if you really did lose it or was stolen from you, but the government still says you have it, and they lock you in a jail or throw you in the gulag? What recourse do you have? Because it's difficult to prove you don't have something. So there's a lot of work that has to be done to better protect Bitcoiners and people in general, because the current laws are not going to cut it. Exactly. All of these rules and regulations and laws are designed for a system that is self-contained, right? It's designed for equities. Do you have, I don't know, pick a stock, Microsoft stock. Yeah, you do, because the brokerage says you have it. You obviously have it. You can't lose Microsoft stock, right? But with bearer assets coming back, and I think that's another battle we'll be fighting, but bearer assets means you can lose something, right? If you have bearer certificates, you can lose a bearer certificate, right? You can lose Bitcoin, and there's no protection to prevent the state from coming after you saying, hey, you owe me money because you have or had this thing. So there's a lot of things that we have to improve on and to work to optimizing for a world that's living on a Bitcoin standard. And it's largely to empower the individual and make sure that, your rights as a sovereign individual are respected and enshrined.
If there's anything that's been consistently proven true over time, it's that I think like governments and folks in authority will and academics or whomever will always find some new line of attack against Bitcoin, right? Whether it's like, oh, it's money laundering, it's used for gambling, it's used for terrorist financing, it's used for it's ESG problems. It's not green enough. I mean, that one's kind of died off pretty significantly now that like BlackRock is offering this product, but haven't heard a whole lot of ESG FUD lately. But
the interesting thing is all of laws and all these things can be changed based on your interpretation of it, right? Like recently, I'm seeing I think Elon Musk posted something like, it's some newspaper that says the free speech is dangerous, right? So even though it's protected in the First Amendment, will it continue to be protected if enough people in control deem it to be a danger to society? Who knows? But you can definitely see everything's open to interpretation. Like just in Canada, who's the terrorist? The protesters are terrorists, right? So what we want is Bitcoiners in the government. So you have to start from somewhere. Either a Bitcoiner's got to go run for office, or you meet the people in charge right now and you teach them about Bitcoin. Because the only protection against this dystopian world is that everyone becomes a Bitcoiner.